Oh yeah, today we're talking about Friday the 13th Part 3. This time around, our boy finally gets his hockey mask and his degeneracy comes out in ways we haven't previously seen.
He ran after me and he caught me and he pulled me down to the ground.
But we'll get to that in a minute.
Part 1, 3D Mayhem.
First things first, Friday the 13th Part 3 isn't technically the real title of this movie. The theatrical title is Friday the 13th Part 3 3D. It's just like a regular slasher movie, but now it's three-dimensional. The use of 3D in horror movies has a fascinating history that spans several decades, marked by periods of intense popularity followed by laws and interest. We had movies like House of Wax and The Creature from the Black Lagoon in the early 50s, but then by the 60s, interest in 3D films waned. The technology was cumbersome and the novelty wore off for many viewers. Then the 80s came along and we saw a slight revival, fueled by advances in technology and a renewed interest in creating immersive theatrical experiences. Horror was at the forefront of this revival. We had movies like Amityville 3D, Jaws 3D, and yes, our boy Jason got in on the action. Not all audience members were impressed. Some viewers felt that the 3D effects were more of a gimmick than a meaningful enhancement to the film. The focus on creating 3D moments sometimes led to awkward or forced scenes that didn't necessarily serve the plot, but were included solely to showcase the 3D technology. For example, scenes like the yo-yo being dropped towards the camera or the spear being thrust directly at the audience were specifically designed for 3D, which some found to be a distraction from the narrative. Though it is cool when we see Jason's first on-screen display of genuinely superhuman powers. That's just awesome.
Part 2, the plot.
The story picks up shortly after the events of Friday the 13th Part 2. Jason Voorhees, having survived his apparent death, is hiding near Crystal Lake. A new group of young adults arrives at a nearby lakefront property for a weekend getaway.
Doesn't look like anything's changed though.
Unbeknownst to them, Jason is lurking. From there, the film follows the familiar slasher formula, with the group being picked off one by one, accumulating in a final showdown between the last survivor, Chris Higgins, and Jason.
Part 3, the Hockey Mask.
One of the most significant aspects of this film is that it's the first film Jason dons the hockey mask. It all starts with a young man named Shelley Finkelstein, an everyman character who many viewers can relate to. He's socially awkward, insecure, and uses humor to mask his insecurities.
Oh, are you dead? Don't touch him, Andrew.
Don't move him! You creep!
Oh my God.
Get up!
Shelley's crush, Vera, is at the lake, probably contemplating where her life went wrong, and somebody hops out of the lake and grabs her. This, of course, turns out to be Shelley with another one of his pranks. Which you have to admit was pretty cunning. He was able to get into the water and swim over there where Vera was sitting undetected. That's impressive.
That'll teach you a valuable lesson. A beautiful girl like you should never go out in the dark alone.
This scene is also notable because it's the first time we see the infamous hockey mask. You can tell that the filmmakers had no idea how iconic it would become. Shelley casually walks away with it after Vera scolds him for scaring the crap out of her. As soon as he leaves, he is promptly dispatched by Jason. Vera comes across Shelley's wallet that he left behind and accidentally drops in the water. She walks in to retrieve it, then, hell yeah, we see Jason for the very first time wearing the legendary mask. Vera mistakes him for Shelley, but quickly realizes it isn't him. Jason then proceeds to shoot her through the eye with a harpoon. He then walks away like a boss. Seriously, Jason has the illest Diddy Bop stroll of all time after this kill. Look at that man go. The behind-the-scenes decision to use a hockey mask came about somewhat serendipitously. The film's 3D effects supervisor was a hockey fan and had his own hockey mask with him on set. He suggested using it to the director, Steve Miner, who was looking for a new and unique face for Jason. The hockey mask was tried on the actor playing Jason, Richard Brooker, and it immediately clicked.
Part 2, Richard Brooker.
Speaking of the actor who played Jason, If there was one actor who influenced who Jason was and how he behaved, it was most certainly Richard Broker. Compared to previous iterations, the hockey mask killer is taller, stronger, and even more brutal. He no longer has long hair, his face doesn't resemble the backwoods hillbilly in part 2, looking more like he did as a little kid in part 1. This time around, Jason kills with confidence. There's almost a cockiness to the way he handles himself. He's simply a killing machine with no stop button. He takes out the youngsters one by one like a professional assassin. Later, Jason actors such as Ted White and Kane Hodder have said that Richard Broker influenced them more than any other Jason actors. Broker's lasting impact on the franchise is absolute.
I'm fine. I'll finally go.
Is someone here?
Our protagonist this time around is Chris, who is often very high on the list when it comes to any sort of final girl rankings. Throughout the film, Chris demonstrates remarkable strength and resourcefulness. She uses her environment to her advantage, from bookcases, logs, a shovel, car window, rope. She really does fight back with anything she can get her hands on. Handles Jason pretty much physically unscathed, and she did it without sweaters, boyfriends coming to her rescue multiple times, etc. She simply uses her wits to evade and fight Jason, showcasing her ability to think quickly under pressure. Now, before we move on, we gotta talk about the elephant in the room. What the hell happened between Chris and Jason in those flashbacks? Chris apparently has a traumatic past involving Jason. She reveals that 2 years before the events of the movie, she was attacked by a disfigured man in the woods, implied to be Jason, but she managed to escape. More specifically, she simply woke up in her bed afterwards.
All I want is to just forget it. I can't. I'll never forget that horrible face. Never.
Yeah, we're all thinking the same thing, right? So, after doing a little research, well, if you consider going on Reddit doing research, then it seems that the intention was absolutely that Jason violated her. At least this was the case in an earlier draft of the script. But even in the final product, we had scenes such as this.
Sex, sex, sex. You guys are getting boring, you know that?
What would a weekend in the country be without sex?
Cool it, Andy.
Didn't mean it that way.
Look, you guys. I want you to have a good time this weekend. What happened to me at the lake happened a long time ago. I'm fine, really, okay? Just forget about me.
What else would they be talking about? The traumatic thing that happened to Chris at the lake, which is later revealed to be an attack by Jason, is implicitly linked to sex. It's pretty weird, but let's not dwell on it for too long. It simply seems to be the case of a bizarre early character development before they cemented who/what Jason was. Still, yikes.
Part 6. Was it all a dream?
Comparatively silly shock endings had become a Friday the 13th tradition by this point. Part 1 had Jason leaping out of the lake as a zombie boy to pull Alice under. Part 2 had the not dead after all Jason smashing through a window to grab Jenny and square up accounts with Paul, whom he had somehow failed to kill by that point despite multiple solid attempts.
I mean, what would it be like today? Some kind of out-of-control psychopath? A frightened retard?
None of that comes anywhere near to what happens in the last 5 minutes of part 3, though. Apparently, following the model of Alice, Chris goes to the lake to reflect. The next morning, she wakes up in a canoe where she's been sleeping. She then sees Jason, unmasked, with a huge smile on his face and still alive. He runs towards the lake, but is revealed that she's just dreaming. Then, in a jump scare that literally no one could have seen coming, Jason's mother's decaying body jumps out of the lake and pulls her under. Not as potent as the ending of the original film, and 90 times more random. Of course, this is a dream too. So the question is, what the heck were they smoking? And there are definitely a few characters in this film that probably wishes they could have scored some. As usual, the police show up 24 hours too late to escort Chris away from the bloodbath. We see Jason lying on the ground with the axe in his head, cut to one last shot of the lake, then cue the credits. Overall, as much as we all love the original Friday the 13th, nobody can really deny that a few of its sequels are far superior. The first film was a surprise hit, the second film tried its best to top it, and it wasn't until the third film that the franchise started to find its swagger. But what say you? How do you feel about Friday 3-Day? Are the effects cringy or charming? And what exactly do you think happened to Chris in those woods? Share all your thoughts in the comment section below.